Hey everybody, this is Alzorath, and welcome to another in development video of the free TCG. Today I'm going to be going over the resource system, which is honestly the first thing I wanted to consider while doing this particular project. I wanted to consider what the resource system would be. There's been several in the past. There's been some, the original was Magic the Gathering, where it had a land-based system where you allocated a certain number of cards in your deck to being land, so you'd have the resources to play what you want, and you'd either draw a land or you'd draw a normal card each turn. And it would all come from the same deck, so it would just be kind of like random. So you could get mana flooded, which is a term for having too much land and not enough cards, or you can get mana screwed, which is getting too few land and too many cards. So there's an interesting little thing with that, and it allowed for multicolor play and stuff like that, which is pretty interesting. And it's a nice way to do it. It was a primitive way to do it, and there have been a lot of other options created since then. Probably the one most people are familiar with is going to be Hearthstone, where each turn you tick up a resource and you can use that many resources for that turn. There's ways to modify the amount, but games such as, like I said, Hearthstone and Duelist utilize this system very effectively, and it keeps things balanced between both players. There's no mana screw and there's no mana flood. You all just have the same amount, and there's some slight modifiers, but generally the ramp is just not a common thing in those. There's usually just like a coin or an advantage spot on the board that you can claim or something like that to get you a small boost in resources, and most boosts are temporary unless you have very specific cards, and usually those cards are very fragile. Another option is basically what Shadow Era does, and that is you have your deck and you have a resource pile. You discard a card from your hand to create one resource, and you can use up to that many resources each turn. A few games utilize this, and it's a pretty good strategy because it turns your cards into the resources. There is one thing that I haven't seen used in a TCG, and someone's probably going to correct me. It's probably been used before. It's not exactly super innovative, but it's the dual use cards. Basically, cards can serve as both a thing and a resource. Right here, you'll see that I have +2, +1, and +2, and that's going to be 5 red faction resources, which means I could play this guy because it's 5 resources, and I'll get over onto what these little pips mean in just a minute. Now, you may be saying, okay, so it's just going to deal with permanence and stuff like that. No. There are cards that do not have a resource pool, and that's going to be I'm a Spell, which is a spell right there. And it doesn't have a resource ability, so it's going to stay in your hand regardless until you want to use it. This is going to be things like your instants, your like sorceries and stuff like that, if you're going to use Magic the Gathering terminology. I haven't decided on a term for them, but they're spells. Just straight up, they're spells, and that's pretty nice of them. And there's also permanence. Let's see, there's I'm a Permanent. Permanents, however, do have the same effect as anything else. Any permanents will have a resource ability. There's gonna probably be a few that have like a +0, which means they don't provide resources, but they can still be played out like that. But I like the idea of being able to have your minions or your objects or your enchantments provide you resources until they're flipped over and turned into an active unit. For example, right here we have 3 units that are essentially upside down. That means they're resource only. If we want to use them, we just exhaust them, and to cast that thingamajig, we'd just have to use all 3 of these to actually cast it out, and then we'd have a thingamajig on the board. Now, let's say we, instead of wanting to play the thingamajig, we wanted to play something that we were currently using for resources. This, unlike the sacrifice thing, does not limit you to saying, oh, do I want to get rid of this card to play this other card? No, to get a resource, you play out the original card. And let's say we wanted to play the Flexima... I shouldn't have named these quite so weird things. The Flexible Mamma Jamma. Okay, so it's going to cost 4 resources to play. We have 5 resources on the board. So what we could do is we could exhaust both of these, and that would allow us to flip this one over. But we wouldn't be able to use that one resource anymore because, well, it's already been utilized. Now, if we wanted to have 5 resources in our pool because we wanted to flip the Mamma Jamma and bring out, say, Speedy, which is a 1-cost guy, we could do that. Except this guy would enter play exhausted, so he wouldn't be able to block on the next turn, whereas Speedy would be able to block. Now, I am going to be using a summoning sickness kind of effect, or basically summoning exhaustion, whatever you want to call it. Basically, whenever you bring something out, it can't be utilized that turn unless it says otherwise. So this one wouldn't be able to attack, but hey, it's a guy on the board that can block their flexible Mamma Jamma. Now, as far as the resource types, I'm not going to go for elements. I'm actually going to go for factions. Red faction is going to be this one right here. Yes, it does look like a little bit of a mushroom, but I like that design. I've used it in a few other things, and I wanted to incorporate it into the game, so it worked out pretty well. Now, you may be wondering, what's to keep you from playing out your entire hand on a turn? Well, you can only play one card as a resource per turn. So, let's say we just opened up and started here. We have a choice of all these cards as resources or whatever, and we'll go for the Making Me Proud upside down, just kind of throw it right there. Now we have a 2 resource spot. Now as a resource, it can be used on the opening turn, so that is a special case. So we have 2 available resources that we could use to bring something out. We could either cast I'm a Spell, which takes 2 resources with 2 red pips. That means that it requires 2 red specific resources. Whenever there's more factions, that'll come into play. Or we could bring out Speedy and just have a floating resource that does nothing. We could do Who's a What's It, which is pretty much the exact cost. Now, as far as the little pips go, that is the minimum required of that color to cast this card out. So if we had, say, a +1 red here, let's go ahead and grab Speedy and just flip him over. We had a +1 red here, and we had a +3 blue, which would be pretty uncommon. Most of the things are going to be 1 or 2 resources. If we had a +3 blue, we would be able to cast this by using the 1 red here, and then the 3 blue to cover up the rest of the cost, because this number up here represents the total cost. So that keeps you kind of in a faction, but allows you the flexibility to go outside a faction should you want. I'm still on the fence as to whether I want the cards whenever you draw them. Right now I have them drawn like this, where they're function up. I'm debating whether to do that or have them draw a resource up. But I think I'm going to stick with the actual card up for now, because you can still read that upside down. Now, I'm a Spell. Let's go ahead and flip this thing back over here. I'm a Spell. You can't play it out like this. It's never going to be seen by your opponent until you actually play it. So, because it doesn't provide any resources, there'd be no point in playing it out like that. I'm trying to think, what else did I forget? Oh, yes. Yes, I forgot another important thing. So you have I'm a Permanent. You had, let's see. Actually, I'm going to take I'm a Permanent out of there. I'm going to go with the Making Me Proud, and I'm going to make that one up here playing like that. And I'm going to put I'm a Proud down here as a resource, and Speedy down here as a resource. Now, you may be saying, what's to keep me from using this as a resource? Well, simply put, once something is on the field as an active unit, it can no longer be reverted to a resource. So it either dies, or it performs its keyword functions and stuff like that, or can attack, etc., etc. So if we wanted to play Thingamajig, we actually could. The only way we could do that is with the Who's a What's It, but let's go ahead and flip that over there. Let's say we didn't have that Who's a What's It. This is what our hand is. We've already played a resource for this turn. We technically, if we had all of these face down, like as resources, we could have cast the Thingamajig. But since we only have 3 out, even if we could place this out, we wouldn't be able to actually flip it over. So that's going to be an important thing to kind of balance here is, do I want this unit as a resource or do I want it as an active unit? You're going to have units that are going to be serving slightly better as resources, such as the Making Me Proud, which is just a temporary name there. And you're going to have units that are slightly better as kind of attackers and stuff like that, like the Thingamajig, which is a rather large unit that is a 7/8. I probably wouldn't cost a 7/8 at 5. This is just an example thing. But you'd rather have the Thingamajig out than the Making Me Proud. So that's going to be something you have to really kind of concern yourself with. Do you want this guy as a blocker early on and kind of risk not being able to cast the Thingamajig later? Or do you want to take the beats, leave these things face down, and get your big guy out faster? So hopefully that explained the resource system in this. If you have any questions, be sure to post them down below. This is of course going to be posted earlier on the Patreon, but I will be releasing it on the channel at a later date for further commentary. If you guys enjoyed this, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you guys on the next update for the free TCG. Keep gaming, have fun, peace out. This has been Alzorath. Bye.